Good morning on this Sunday, February 14th, Valentine's Day, and welcome to the Georgia Gang. Fulton County's new district attorney opens a criminal investigation into former President Donald Trump. And Georgia's attorney general says the Rayshard Brooks case will remain in Fulton County and not be turned over to another prosecutor. Also, the case of trade secrets could have huge ramifications for a yet-to-open Georgia battery plant that would create hundreds of jobs. Bill, Theron, Kathy, and Janelle are all here. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis calls it a matter of high priority and is opening a criminal investigation against former President Donald Trump. The focus will be on the former president's call to Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. An audio tape of that call was released where the former president said they need to find some 11,000 votes. Phil, I'll start with you. A lot of us are very familiar with that tape. Do you think this investigation is warranted, and is it warranted in Fulton County?
I think those are very good questions, and I don't think it's warranted at all, and especially in Fulton County. Why? You had just said the key phrase apparently in that conversation that District Attorney Willis is looking at is when the president told the Secretary of State, well, you ought to find votes. And so, well, you know, we do know from the Secretary of State's office in recent reports that there were 8,000 plus votes that were cast illegally, and that's not coming from the president or anybody. That's coming from the Secretary of State. And of course, we all know that Fulton County had a lot of shenanigans going, including stopping the vote. And so if you're not paying attention to Fulton County, you're not paying attention to anything here. So I don't think Fani Willis ought to be pursuing this, although if she is going to pursue it, let's take it all the way and let's see what happens with regard to that controversial taping that allegedly occurred in Florida by one of the staffers for Secretary Raffensperger. The secretary never did explain how that got taped and how it got leaked, and if it was done in Florida, that is a felony under Florida law.
Theron, you know, there's a lot of controversy about these numbers, and Phil had mentioned 8,000 votes, but there's also a lot of fallout over this recorded conversation. Is this a chance to maybe get to the bottom of everything?
Well, first of all, welcome back, Lori. It's good to be with you again. And, you know, I totally disagree with my good friend Phil. You know, Lori, we remember when Fani Willis was running for office and when she was elected, you know, Phil praised her for, you know, making a commitment to look at everything that she's going to have to look at from the previous DA and to pursue these cases if there's evidence. And it's clear that former President Trump violated the law, but he also violated his oath of office with this call. And so I think it's absolutely the right thing to do because we want to put this behind us. I mean, we all heard the call. We all heard what he said. And I think that she is opening up this investigation to not continue to be partisan or to try to attack a former Republican president. But many people believe, Lori, that it was that call that was pretty much the nail in the coffin for former Senator Loeffler and former Senator David Perdue. And that's when I think voters are just like, you know, enough is enough with this former president. So ultimately, I think she's doing the right thing. She's got to continue to be transparent about the evidence. And ultimately, I think that, you know, she's made national media about this because a lot of folks feel that what the former president did was illegal.
Janelle, even Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger has said, you know, it does belong in Fulton County. It should be investigated in Fulton County. I know none of us are attorneys on this show, but do you agree?
Well, I also welcome back. And, you know, I think Speaker Gingrich said it best when he said that President Trump is a great unifier when it comes to the Democratic Party because it gives them something to talk about so they don't have to focus on the real issues. And I feel like we're seeing that again. So now we have DA Willis, who is trying to go after the former president who's now no longer in office versus spending time going after all the crime that's happening in Atlanta. And I just think this is another way to continue to try to unify the Democratic Party around the president who hasn't even said anything the last few weeks. So I think that this is just one of those things. If she wants to prosecute anyone who is connected to this former election, why is she not prosecuting any of the people who voted twice in Fulton County? Like, there is a number of things that she could be focusing on other than President Trump. But you know what? This is like I said, like Speaker Gingrich said, he's a unifier, so we're going to continue to see them come after this president.
Kathy, is there is this political overreach, or are Fani Willis's actions justified here?
Well, I think they're justified, and I think we'll find out as she goes through the process, where it takes us. I mean, remember, Raffensperger taped this conversation because he had received multiple phone calls from the president prior to that, and he felt like he needed to protect himself from what was being said. He's the one who suggested that the Fulton County DA look into it, and we were transitioning between DAs at the time that this occurred. And so I think she bears some responsibility to follow up on this and see where it takes us. I just also want to say, and I'm going to look into this because I want to put it to bed, I think there may be allegations of 8,000 fraudulent votes, but I don't think there's any confirmation of that, and I don't recall hearing anything about anybody voting twice in Fulton County after multiple audits. But I'm going to look into that so that we can confirm this.
And I'm sure Fannie Willis's
Lori,
office
I'm
will
going
get to the bottom.
I'm going to repeat this one more time. I want to clarify it because Ryan Germany, the General Counsel of the Secretary of State's office, testified under oath before a State House committee that 8,000 votes were illegally cast. They can't be cured, Kathy. I just wanted you to be aware of that. These are people who are out of state. There were also reports just the other day from the Secretary of State's office that non-citizens voted and some felons voted. I could go on and on. So that's the point that I want to make.
Okay, we will continue to talk about this, of course, but I do want to move on to a related issue. A controversial report released this week by the Georgia GOP has really even split the Republican Party. It calls for drastic changes to Georgia's voting laws, including doing away with ballot drop boxes and no excuse absentee voting. It would also prevent voters from being automatically registered when they get their driver's licenses. And that was a really popular move that current Governor Kemp did when he was Secretary of State. Janelle, your thoughts on all of this?
Well, I mean, let's see, there obviously has to be reform. Like I said, Raphael Warnock right now, Senator Warnock, is currently being investigated for voter registration misconduct. We have, like I said, thousands of people who voted illegally. I've had people come up to me personally and say that they went to go vote and was told that they had already voted. So obviously there's something wrong and there are things that have happened. And I know we want to pretend like this election went off without a hitch, but that's not what happened. So I don't think it's as complicated as people are trying to make it seem. It's nothing wrong with tightening up this process to make sure that people feel that their vote matters and that we have integrity in the election process. And that is the bottom line.
Theron, there are a lot of Republicans who don't necessarily agree with this report that they should go this far in, quote, tightening up the rules.
And I talked to a lot of those Republicans this week at the state capitol, some of whom say, you know what, this is too far. I got to go back to my district and try to get reelected. Keep in mind, Lori, we're going to go through a redistricting process. And some of these Republican members, their districts actually may become more progressive and have more Democrats drawn into their districts, particularly in the metro area. But I want to just say something as a Democrat, but more importantly, as a person who really, truly believes in democracy. I think what I've been saying consistently on this show is this. Yeah, there were some irregularities, there were some challenges with our voting systems, and I'm not denying that. But ultimately, what we got to give credit to are the Democrats who ran for office, who, as the system as it was, followed the rules, and we basically just beat the Republicans. And so I think, when you start from that premise, then you can move to saying, okay, how do we make this system better? But I think when you read this report and you hear some of the rhetoric during the time where Rudy Giuliani was here and how Republicans falsely said that there was massive voter fraud in Georgia, and that was just completely untrue. And so ultimately, I think the rhetoric is sort of catching up to them now. But we do need to look at this, and I think that ultimately Democrats and Republicans will agree on something.
And Theron, well, actually, Phil and Kathy, I just want to get your thoughts, 30 seconds on this, because Janelle had mentioned this investigation into Raphael Warnock and his role in the New Georgia Project. This case will be turned over to the Georgia Attorney General. Phil and Kathy, just your thoughts on this. Phil first.
Well, real quick, I think that is something to be investigated because of the fact we've got 23 bills now in the legislature for election reform. And I think that's an indicator that we need to be doing something. And so I don't have a problem with that investigation at all.
Kathy?
Well, the new Georgia project has been investigated so many times. It's amazing anybody in the Secretary of the Attorney General's office gets anything done. They have said that Warnock's name was incorrectly listed as CEO rather than chairman of the board when they incorporated the documents. This should be a pretty quick fix. I think it's entirely political and it should just get done.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thanks, everyone. Coming up, in an unusual move, Georgia's Attorney General says no to the Fulton County DA's request to recuse herself in the Rayshard Brooks case. We'll discuss.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis wanted to recuse herself from two cases that stemmed from events this past summer. One, the police shooting of Rayshard Brooks. The other involving alleged excessive force by Atlanta police officers against two college students. Theron, former Fulton County District Attorney Paul Howard made a controversial decision to charge the officers in the Rayshard Brooks shooting, one of them charged with murder. Your thoughts on Attorney General Chris Carr's decision to keep these cases under Fani Willis, because this was a surprise to many.
It was, and for our viewers, I think one of the reasons why District Attorney Fani Willis referred these cases to the State Attorney General's office is because there was just so much controversy around the motivation of then District Attorney Paul Howard to bring up charges against the officers that were involved. And so I think, if you look at what the Attorney General did, which I do believe he looked at this case extensively, I think he reviewed it with his team, but he made a decision to actually kick it back to Fulton County. I think that the challenge here is that, one, you have a lot of things that were done with the previous DA, but more importantly, if you have this case in Fulton County, Lori, it's going to be very difficult to find impartial jurors because these were cases that received a lot of national attention. And so what happens now is that I go back to what I said last week, and that is that we got to think about the victims and their families and make sure that they're being communicated to in an effective manner where they're not learning about sort of this back and forth as far as who's going to take the case from the media. And I think the District Attorney's Office is committed to doing that. And I think ultimately she's got to make a decision on how she's going to proceed.
And Phil, maybe we're looking at a change of venue, but not a change of prosecution?
Well, I'm going to have to support District Attorney Fani Willis on this one, Theron. You might be proud of me. And I think that Attorney General Chris Carr, my friend, a Republican, made a mistake in this decision. Because what is the first duty of any lawyer? It's to pursue justice. Fani Willis, as you're pointing out, both of you inherited a situation where you have a former district attorney, her predecessor under ethical cloud. He said conflicting statements about these cases. There's assistant ADAs that are working with Fani Willis that also worked under Paul Howard. You can't have them testifying against Fani Willis for what they knew under the previous DA. I think the case is all messed up, and I think who has the biggest prosecutorial unit in the state? It's Attorney General. He should be the one to do this. I think it would take a difficult situation away from Fani Willis.
All right, I want to move on because this week the governor plans to unveil a rewrite of Georgia's citizens arrest law. That was a promise he made in his State of the State address, and we all remember the case of Ahmaud Arbery, who was shot and killed after three men said he committed a crime. Janelle, what changes, if any, would you like to see in this law?
Yeah, I like the way they are going after it as it is. I've said from the very beginning that I think this is what we should have focused on, is these citizens arrest laws. There are a number of laws on the books that's been on the books for so many years, and I think we just need to look at them and see how they can be reformed and fit today's time. So I'm glad that they're looking at this. I'm glad that this is going to change because I definitely support it. So I'm just looking forward to seeing what the outcome is, but I like how they're presenting it.
Kathy, how would you like to see changes in this law? It's been controversial for years. I remember covering the issue when I was a political reporter down at the Capitol.
Well, I think it's a long overdue change, but I think there's a corollary law that needs to be changed, and that is the section on the duty to retreat and the stand your ground law, because people should have the right to defend themselves against attack, but they should also have the requirement to remove themselves from conflict if they possibly can. If you repealed both of those things, arguably, the Ahmaud Arbery case situation wouldn't have happened because the people involved, because they were law enforcement, would have known they had no legs to stand on. I think we have to do both things to get this right.
All right, switching gears because we had some surprising news at the time of this taping. Georgia Supreme Court Chief Justice Harold Melton is stepping down in July after 16 years on the bench, giving Governor Kemp a chance to appoint his replacement. He's leaving more than a year before his term expires. Phil, it's another case of an appointment here on the Supreme Court.
That's right. I think we ought to have elections when we can, and we have had judicial elections in the past. Congratulations to Chief Justice Melton. He was first appointed by Governor Sonny Perdue. Seems like time flies after 16 years. He's had a pretty good record. But you're right. It's the same old tactic by the governor's office for an appointment.
Theron, your thoughts on him stepping down?
Yeah. I agree with Phil. I want to definitely congratulate Chief Justice Melton on his service. He's a person that's well respected on both sides of the aisle. And I'm sure that he's making this decision. That's what's best for him and his family. But ultimately, this does give the governor another opportunity to make an appointment. And so I think that the Chief Justice will probably have a lot of input on who that person, he or she, should be. But ultimately, just want to thank him for his outstanding service to the state.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks, everybody. Coming up, accusations of stealing trade secrets could put one of Georgia's biggest economic development deals in jeopardy. We'll discuss after the break.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
This is an interesting story. A $2.6 billion vehicle battery plant that was set to open in Jackson County is on hold and possibly in jeopardy. The International Trade Commission ruled this week that the South Korean company SK stole trade secrets from its rival LG Energy Solution. Phil, I mean, this is quite a mess, and it could mean a loss of hundreds of jobs in that area, an area that needs them. And I mean, the place is massive. It's already built. Where do we go from here?
Well, you're right about what you said. It's, I think, the biggest development project that's going on right now in the state of Georgia. But this SK has been a shady company. I think that was the correct decision. You can't be condoning the stealing of trade secrets, obviously. Now, hopefully, there can be other vendors that can be used so the development can continue, and that's the hope.
Kathy, what's the best case scenario here?
I don't even think I know, but I do hope that in the agreement that the state made with SK is if this deal goes south, that there's a clawback and Georgia taxpayers can be made whole, because it's a huge investment that the state made in this project, and we deserve to get the benefit of it.
All right, switching gears, we're learning more about bribery charges against two Lilburn officials, the former assistant city manager and the head of the city's downtown development, indicted for alleged crimes that cost taxpayers more than $200,000, and that could just be the starting point. We're talking about Doug Stacks and Norman Nash. A third person, David Kennedy, is also charged in this case. Theron, I mean, this appears to be a pretty elaborate scheme, allegedly.
Yeah, and I'll say for Phil, he's going to get a little giggle out of this, but let's not rush to judgment. As I always say, these things are fluid. But this one is very interesting, Lori, in a lot of ways, because it's dealing with creation of shell companies and people sort of using inside information to go and develop and to build things in this city. And so ultimately, I think the taxpayers of Lilburn trusted these officials to be good stewards of their money and not to commit these crimes that they're allegedly accused of. Yeah,
and Janelle, I mean, the new district attorney in Gwinnett County says she's not playing around, that there will be a full prosecution here.
And it should be. If this is what took place, it absolutely should be. I'm just getting really, really frustrated and tired of just so many abuses of power and just people taking their roles for granted. I think that at the end of the day, money and power is a magnifier. So it's just everyone needs to take a personal look at who they are to see if these roles that we're giving people fit where they are, how they feel and what they really believe. But I really think that there needs to be that the hammer needs to be dropped on this if this is actually true, because we're just tired of it.
Absolutely. You said it, Janelle. Well, you know, during the pandemic, just about every school is offering some type of online schooling, and it appears that it could be here to stay, even after the pandemic. Cobb County announcing it will offer virtual school for students who want to continue learning that way. Phil, the pandemic really could have changed school forever, but my question is, if these kids are not physically going to school, but they are enrolled, what does this do for school funding?
Well, you're asking a great question about the school funding, and I think that there's going to be a huge battle going on now nationwide and, of course, in Georgia, because I think all of the health experts of all political stripes are saying in-person learning is the best thing, especially K through 12 and in college. Basically, no one's going to die if we follow the protocols, and parents are struggling with regard to trying to teach young kids at home. There's a whole list of problems that are occurring, and you're not getting your money's worth if it's virtual, and a lot of kids can't do this. They need to be in person. So I think it's a mess, and I think President Biden now has messed things up. He promised in-person learning in 100 days in almost all the schools. He's had to because of the teachers union, he's had to draw back. So I think it's a huge battle, and I hope that in-person learning wins in the end.
Well, Theron, let me ask it this way. Is this a way of offering school choice to parents? Even after the pandemic, they would have a choice whether to send their kids to school in person, or they might say, you know what, my kid learns better virtually, and just let him or her stay at home.
Well, giving parents that choice is very important, Lori, because a lot of parents, that I talk to actually are sort of split down the middle. More of them are saying exactly what Phil is saying, which is that they do want to work back towards in-person learning. But you look at what's going on around the metro area, a lot of these counties right now are trying to get back to in-person learning, where teacher safety is paramount. But ultimately, you got to do it in a phased way and follow the science. Let's not forget there was a CDC report that came out that said that classrooms in schools are not places where we see widespread of the coronavirus. And so ultimately, giving parents those choices to choose whether in-person learning or virtual learning works for their kids, I think it's the right decision. And I think it's going to be something that other districts are going to look at doing in the future as well.
Janelle, last word on this, because we're talking about school choice.
Yeah, I mean, I am such a fan of school choice, and I actually find it exciting to hear Democrats talk about school choice in some capacity, because it seems like I only hear choice when it comes to, abortion. But other than that, I definitely think that at the end of the day, parents should have school choice all the way around. I hope this opens up a bigger discussion.
How did I know you were going to say that? Thanks, Janelle. Thanks, everybody. Coming up, we'll have winners and losers. Stay tuned.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
Theron, I'll start with you this week.
Well, first of all, happy Valentine's Day to you, Lori, Kathy, and Janelle, and Phil. Happy Valentine's Day to your lovely wife. But also want to make sure I say a happy Valentine's Day to my beautiful wife and my mom, so definitely want to get that in. I also want to make a winner this week. Pierre Pigney at Tracy's Medicine Center, ran into him this week, and also Jeff Baker, who I saw at dinner, so they're big fans of the show. Want to make them winners. Also, DeKalb County announced this week that they're giving $21 million in rental and utilities relief to their residents to help pay rent and utility bills, and this also helps the tenants and the landlords. And then lastly, Microsoft, who's a client, did a big announcement in Atlanta this week where they're investing a lot of money into the west side of Atlanta, going to create some data centers and going to bring a lot of jobs here for Atlanta. So I want to give a big shout out to them.
All right, great. Janelle, we have about 2 minutes and 30 seconds, so we're good.
Perfect. And happy Valentine's Day, of course, to my hubby, to everyone on the show, and to everyone who's watching. And thank you, hubby, for making Valentine's Day every day. And then I would also like to send my condolences on behalf of a friend, Tanya Boga, to the family of Mr. Wallace Coopwood. I personally didn't have a chance to meet with him, but I hear all the stories about him. So definitely sending my prayers to them. And I do have a loser this week. I have to make Melissa Rosa, Governor Cuomo's my loser this week for admitting to reporting false numbers during the COVID regarding the nursing home deaths. So I have to make her my loser.
All right, Phil, over to you.
Well, happy Valentine's Day to everybody, including my wife, Bonnie. It's a winner. And also, I am proud of Theron for saying don't rush to judgment, but he breaks his own rule when it comes to President Trump. In the House, when they supposedly impeached him, there were no hearings. He didn't have a defense attorney. He wasn't able to say anything. That really was a rush to judgment, and he's not going to be impeached. And finally, I want to make a winner, and I didn't get a chance to say this last week, but it's House Bill 276, and that basically is protecting girls' sports for girls. That's basically what it is. Biological males should not be competing against biological females. It's unfair, and I look to see this bill passed one of these days.
All right, we'll discuss that in the upcoming weeks. Kathy, over to you. We have about 45 seconds.
Okay, I just want to give my condolences to the family of 12-year-old David Mack, who was murdered near his family home in southwest Atlanta this week. They still haven't found out what has happened. The family's got a GoFundMe page, but if you have any information about this, please call the Atlanta Police Department so the neighborhood and the family can have some peace of mind. My loser this week is the governor for the $1,000 bonuses. What employees really need is cost of living adjustments and raises on a regular basis. This is no way to run a business, and hopefully we'll talk about it some more next week.
Well, sounds good. And I will make my winner, my brother who passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack. It is Heart Healthy Month, so please, just a reminder to get a check. Thanks so much, everybody, and we will see you next week.